Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Sunday afternoon, interrupting the Bills and Chiefs game. So, hopefully, you are enjoying your Sunday, having a good time. Can't wait to dive back into the Broncos and Chargers matchup. We'll also take some questions today. And joining to that are my guys, Alex and Tyler. Alex, it's a good time for Philly sports, man. How you doing today?
Yeah, it is a good time. Precursor to the picks, I will be picking the Eagles, and if they lose the 1 week that I pick them instead of Tyler, I will go ballistic. But been a good time, and to the Padres fans, I'm sure we will hate each other for the next week. So get strapped in.
Yeah, it was a fun week on Twitter. I say that sarcastically, looking at all of the Dodgers and Padres talk. So I'm just ready for baseball season to be over. That's where I stand on the matter. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
I love that I just don't care really about watching other sports. I'm not involved with this. I just watch like Dodgers fans want to burn things down or Padres fans sometimes want to burn things down. I'm just like, we got Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout and we suck every year. So I'm an Angels fan and, the Lakers aren't doing anything and, we have the Chargers at least. So yeah. Yes, Alex Davis, I see you in the chat. Odd broadcast time. It just worked out that way. And thank
Look,
you
if
for the
if
weird
you want
30
if you want to
previews
be
right
with
here.
us instead of watching Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, you're fucking weird, but we really appreciate you.
You're the weird ones.
Yeah, we're the weird ones planning this around this. But I mean, one of us has a game to watch right after this. I was traveling back from the Pacific Northwest with a bunch of high school kids on Friday night, and frankly, didn't feel like waking up early morning on Saturday and talking about the Chargers. So I wanted to be able to have the day off and recover.
Yeah.
So we got delayed in Vegas. I didn't get home on Friday night until like 1 a.m., which for me is like super late, even on a Friday night. So after traveling, I just wanted to be able to take that day, and appreciate Tyler and Alex for working around my schedule as I get back in the swing of things.
Nice of you, Steven, to show the kids what homelessness and crack cocaine looks like.
Oh my gosh, it was sad. Like I went to Portland in like 2017. Went on a student section trip to go see Utah play at Oregon State, and we stayed in Portland we stayed in Portland on Sunday, and it was really nice downtown. And then going back 5 years later was definitely disappointing, but there were a lot of other good parts. I mean, the kids had fun. Washington and Portland, that whole area, very very pretty. So it was a good trip for sure. All right, so we're gonna give some final thoughts. I'll give my initial thoughts, I guess, on the Chargers matchup with the Broncos tomorrow night, and as we always do, have to start with the injury news. Obviously, we've kind of been expecting Keenan Allen to be out. He basically said as much to Lindsley Theory of ESPN earlier in the week that he was targeting a Week 7 return against the Seattle Seahawks. As Ross Ackerman says, Geno Smith is goated. That's really funny. But yeah, so Keenan Allen likely not playing tomorrow. You guys talked on the show on Tuesday about the key matchup being whoever's guarded by Patrick Surtain. Sounds like that's going to be Mike Williams. So Alex, we'll start with you. Where are you at with Keenan Allen's health status and how that changes things for tomorrow night's game against the Broncos and specifically Patrick Surtain?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned, I guess, about the timeline because I feel like we all kind of thought it would be the Week 8 game or the Week 7 game or after the bye. If they really wanted to stretch it out that far, I always did think it was kind of a long shot to play against the Broncos. I guess technically it's not, over. He still could play tomorrow, I guess, if he does feel good enough, but it seems like the timeline they picked would be against that. I really wanted Keenan Allen to play simply because I think that even in a hobbled state, he has a better chance at beating Patrick Surtain than Mike Williams does. Just with the tools to separate that he has. Not to say Mike Williams isn't going to get his. I do think he will have his wins against Patrick Surtain at times. But I do think that makes it a little bit more difficult because you could have had, Mike Williams against some other corner on the Broncos that, wouldn't have been as effective as Surtain, and that would have kind of opened up things for the offense, especially considering the Ronald Darby injury as well. But now that you have to have Mike on Surtain, and then natural separators in terms of Josh Palmer and the other wide receivers that are kind of past Mike Williams at this point. I I don't really count on them like getting much separation during the game. DeAndre Carter obviously kind of been very quiet the last few weeks as well. Maybe they activate Michael Bandy. Like I don't know what they're gonna do here, but at the same time, it's just a little bit stressful to see Mike Williams potentially kind of getting taken out of the game by Patrick Surtain, and then them not having a lot left at wide receiver, I guess, to fill that void behind him. So that's kind of why I would have liked for Keenan Allen to play this game, even though I always thought it was a little bit unlikely.
Yeah, Mike Williams versus Patrick Surtain. If Mike Williams wants to go out and have a great game like he did against the Browns, great. That's awesome. If he wants to go beat Pat Surtain that bad, great. But like Alex said, I'm not really expecting it. No slight on Mike Williams. He's just not that great of a separator. And Pat Surtain is playing really, 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 really well. And not that he shut down Devontae Adams, but Adams is a whole other class of receiver. And I thought Surtain did really, really well against him. The good news is the Chargers have been figuring out how to pivot with their offense, get either easy targets from Mike Williams, yak plays, or just find a way to get him one-on-one on the outside. And they found a way to evolve in some way their offense, in particular the run game, without Keenan Allen. So it's going to be rough sledding. People who are expecting the Chargers to put up 30-something points, 27 points this game, I think that's ignorant, I suppose, to the fact that the Broncos do have a good defense. So, of course, the Chargers are better out there with Keenan Allen, no doubt about that. The Broncos are, I think, 6th in the league in third down conversion rate for their defense, 6th being in a good way for them. So, yes, they absolutely will miss Keenan Allen, as they have. But I think this Chargers team is at least set up to survive because they've had to do it the last couple of weeks. Granted, not against this caliber of a defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Teresa was pointing out a lot of people really underestimating how good Patrick Surtain is at this point. I understand he's still relatively young, right? And there's not, the big names at corner are not playing super well. Obviously JC has had his struggles getting healthy. Jalen Ramsey hasn't had a ton of great games. Tre'Davious White is injured. So I think there's a legitimate argument that Patrick Surtain is the best cornerback in the league, like full stop right now. And, the way that he has played over the past few weeks against elite competition, like we all praised Asante Samuel Jr. for taking some swings at Devontae Adams, and Patrick Surtain flat out shut him down in their one-on-one matchups, like Tyler was saying. So I'm not expecting a ton of production from Mike Williams. I do think this is a huge game for the rest of the other players in this kind of matchup around Mike Williams. So the good news there is that, we talked about, or I talked about this last week leading up to the Browns game, how it kind of seemed like the other guys, if you will, were kind of at a matchup disadvantage just from a talent standpoint when you're talking about John Johnson and Denzel Ward and all these guys, Greg Newsome, who are really, really good secondary players. But Justin Simmons is injured. Caden Stearns is injured. Those are their two starting safeties. You still have Kareem Jackson, of course, who's a good player, but clearly not who he once was. Ronald Darby is injured. K'Wan Williams is a good slot corner for sure. But outside of Surtain, you have some combination of Damari Mathis, who I liked at Pittsburgh, but he's still a late round rookie corner. Isang Bassi, or however you say it, I can't even remember. He spent 2 weeks on the Chargers last year. So this should be a matchup advantage for Gerald Everett, who was quiet last week, for Josh Palmer, who was quiet last week. And we might not see a ton of Mike Williams, but I think you will see, in my opinion, at least Gerald Everett have a really solid game and bounce back in a big way this week.
Yeah, I would think so, and I would hope so. We'll see what they do with Donald Barham. They tried to get him involved a bit last week, didn't really get going, and then after that false start or whatever it was, they seemed to pull him. But I would have to imagine at this point, against this Broncos team, yeah, you want to get him more involved this game.
Yeah, so obviously that's going to be a key thing to keep an eye on there. The next thing, which really kind of, we'll see how this progresses, right? Corey Lindsley does have an illness. He was downgraded to questionable. Brandon Staley said on was that yesterday that it was kind of a 24-hour thing. One of the reporters pointed out that he did have a fever. So now that he's being downgraded, maybe that obviously hasn't progressed the way that they have hoped. So we'll see what happens there. And yesterday, there wasn't any real concern that Corey Lindsley was going to miss the game on Monday, but obviously depends how he's feeling. Obviously, all of us have had a fever, and I don't know specifically like what kind of fever he's experiencing right now. I'm not super concerned about Will Clapp playing in this game. Like individually, I think he is fine, but I think we all saw the last week and the week before that just the kind of difference from a technique, from a schematic standpoint that Corey Lindsley is able to make when he's healthy, when he's right. So that's really where I'm at. I think Will Clapp is a fine backup. Obviously, LDE Bruin points out, I hope it's not COVID because, a COVID situation would be really, really bad for this team right now. But we'll have to see how that progresses. Individually, like I said, I feel fine about Will Clapp playing in this game, but obviously going up against Draymond Jones and what's DJ Jones?
DJ Jones.
Yeah, without Corey Lindsley is certainly less than ideal.
Didn't they just clarification? Did they change the COVID rules till it's 5 days now? I don't remember if they did that, but I don't.
I'll be honest, I thought they scrapped it.
I thought
they might have scrapped it entirely. I don't remember. Yeah. So, but that was just my thing on that. I don't remember what they did. Corey Lindsley thing, I guess, is not too big of a deal because I think they can survive with Will Clapp, but obviously just the communication and everything is just so much better when he's on the field. Obviously, this team has taken the hits when it comes to their right and left tackle spots. Trey Pipkins obviously kind of going to be playing injured in this game with his sprained MCL as well, in addition to Jamari in place of Slater already. So you don't want them to be taking more hits along the offensive line. I guess my hope is he actually has a fever as opposed to any potential, load management situation or trying to cover up the tendonitis thing. Not trying to accuse the Chargers of doing that, but, I guess it is a little bit coincidental. So hope the best for Corey Lindsley. Hope he plays tomorrow as well. I guess Will Clapp can be fine in relief in this game if he's needed to be.
Yeah, this is a really good interior for the Broncos. At least their two main guys, the two Joneses, 24 pressures, 5 sacks, 19 run stops between those two guys. Really good group. We wanted Jones as kind of a trade target last year. DJ Jones is a potential free agent addition this past year. As far as centers go with run blocking and assigning how that works, Steven, I'm not really looking for the right word. I'm trying to find the right words here. What is Lindsley's role when it comes to run blocking? Does he adjust and call out and whatnot? Like, how does that work?
From a run blocking perspective, I don't think it would necessarily change a whole lot. He's probably the one that would make the checks, if any. For me, I think it's just your game plan changes pretty dramatically because of going from Corey Lindsley to Will Clapp, because the two players are different. Will Clapp is a taller, more of a stronger, interior presence as opposed to somebody who can get out and get into space. And I loved that that shot of him last week pointing out the defensive back and calling his shot, and then ended up getting a pancake block. So it's a big deal losing Corey Lindsley. Like I said, obviously losing or going to Will Clapp is he's a fine backup, but they're going to have to change a lot of things. And that's my biggest thing is, like, we've seen so many changes with this offensive line. Obviously nothing to the extent of what's happening with the Rams so far this season, but would like to see them keep some continuity. So we'll see what happens with Corey. I have a feeling that he does end up playing, but if he doesn't, it's a big deal against Draymond and DJ Jones. And last year in Denver, we saw Draymond and Aleem McNeil kind of just destroy the Chargers interior. Granted, that was the freaking Senor Clemente game. But still, obviously losing Corey Lindsley would not be ideal for this week.
Absolutely not. But like you said, expect him to play. Haven't heard anything otherwise. So I think it's just, as long as it doesn't get worse. But as it stands right now and yesterday, he's just questionable because he is sick or was sick, but should play.
Yeah. So fingers crossed, everybody, in that regard. All right. I think that was pretty much it for the injury designation outside of the Broncos stuff. Like I mentioned, Caden Stern's not playing. Josie Jewell is out. And then all of the other injuries have really changed things. I haven't seen an update. The one thing I was really hoping to get some clarity on was kind of what they're going to do at offensive tackle. I don't know if you guys have heard any of this, but Billy Turner hasn't really played. He was on the active roster last week, but they still decided to kind of keep things slow with him. So unless they're going to play him this week, it sounds like we'll get Calvin Anderson and Cam Fleming. So theoretically, this should be a good Khalil Mack spot, and maybe we get 2 or 3 pressures from Chris Rumph for Kyle Van Noy this week. That would also be pretty fun.
My bold prediction was 2 sacks from Chris Rumph. So,
Ooh.
I'm hoping for a lot here, or 1-1 with Van Noy and Rumph.
Full sacks or Armstrongs?
No, well, 4 Armstrongs, 2 full ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Of Armstrongs, that's hilarious. I'm gonna just look up really quickly if they've announced who is starting an offensive tackle.
And then the update on Simmons was that he's playing, but he's just coming back, so don't expect.
Oh, Justin Simmons is playing.
Is he? That's what I assumed.
Well, they activated him off of IR earlier this week.
Yeah, off IR, but
right
not
before
roster
me and
officially.
Tyler recorded on Tuesday, I believe.
Look at us, we're so prepared. This is what happens when we spend all day watching football. I just assumed that he was playing, but in a limited,
Did they activate him, or did they just start the window or whatever?
It sounded like they activated him off of IR from what I remember.
I know they opened the window for sure. That's for sure. Simmons is. God, they have a long injury report.
Yeah.
Well, they do, but a lot of them are Belichickian questionables, or guys that'll play the game. So
sure.
So I have James Palmer saying that Simmons is expected to return, but that was October 7th.
Because I saw that they opened the window. I didn't see that he was fully active.
Right.
Oh God.
I guess
really?
we'll find
Turner's wearing 57. I didn't realize that. The hell kind of left tackle number is that?
That'll be his PBE on Monday. Or Pro Football Focus grade, I guess.
Okay, sounds like Zach Stevens was saying that the Broncos want to keep Billy Turner at right tackle. They don't want to play him at left tackle. So sounds like he's probably not going to see any game action right now.
Cool. The defense could use all the help it can get.
All right. Okay, so we obviously announced our picks earlier on Twitter for the league-wide picks. I think mine went very, very poorly. It was a very strange morning in the NFL. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, we'll get to some of our key predictions for this game, and then we'll take some questions. Obviously, going to be a quick turnaround for this episode. But Tyler, we'll start with you, man. Where's your head at for the score prediction tomorrow? And ultimately, what is your game pick?
Oh, boy. So logic would say that the Chargers offense, should score less than they have been. I think that's a given. If they score more than less, that's great. They go out and score 30 points. That's awesome. Some Chargers fans are expecting the Chargers to do that. I think that's very foolish. There's no way the Chargers, barring a Wilson collapse, which I guess is possible, but I'm not betting on the Chargers to score 30 something. I also think the Broncos are facing a Chargers defense that is not great. And frankly, the Broncos and Russell Wilson, they are kind of due for some sort of bounce back. I know they scored 20 something against the Raiders, but obviously we just watched them have a complete crap show on offense against the Colts. They've had some time to prepare. It sounds like, if you want to believe this was a real issue, that Russell Wilson's arm is better, like his shoulder. They got the injection and it should be better. So there's a world where this Broncos team, especially as a rival, does score more, and I think they will. The current over-under is 45 points. I think the Chargers will win. I have them winning 24-21, which is slightly less than they've scored recently, and the Broncos get a slight boost from their 16 points per game. But still, I do think the Chargers win, especially at home, and especially because the Broncos aren't super healthy either, even with some guys returning. So I have the Chargers winning 24-21.
Yeah. I'm of a very similar mindset score-wise. I do think the Broncos will get a bump up just because, they've had 10 days to prepare since Thursday Night Football as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that should, in theory, help them, although the Chargers had 10 days to prepare, then lost 38-10 to the Jags, so who knows. But
Yeah.
I do think the offensive schemes, I mean, should be a little bit better. Russell Wilson apparently got that injection in his shoulder, so we'll see how that goes. But I think you will see a little bit of a better offensive performance from the Broncos, if only partially because the Chargers defense has also been a little bad too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they put up an extra touchdown or at least an extra field goal on the board compared to what their usual scoreline has been. I'm going to go 24-20 and say that the Chargers win this one. Just don't believe at the end of the day the Broncos offense has enough to keep up. I think this is kind of this game is actually a very terrifying one. I think if Javonte Williams was playing, just because of how explosive of a runner he is. So for me, that would be particularly scary, but Melvin Gordon does not instill that same level of fear in me. And although I do believe he, could have a good game against this kind of a run defense. So for me, considering just how much Denver's offense feels out of sync right now, and the Chargers offense the last 2 weeks has kind of ascended past where it was, I think the Chargers will score less because of this Denver defense, but I think they'll hit that week 1 or 2 average where they've scored 24 points in both games against the Raiders and the Chiefs. I think they do it against the Broncos as well, and do get the win in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think I feel in a pretty similarly to both of you guys. I do think this is going to be kind of a lower scoring affair for different reasons, right? I do think this Broncos defense is very, very good. We'll see kind of what happens. Obviously, primetime Justin Herbert is a big factor here as well. But I do think they'll see a much tougher defensive front this week. The Browns and the Texans the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's just you're talking about bottom 5 run defenses in the league right now. The Broncos are much better, like we were talking about Draymond and DJ Jones, and I think losing Josie Jewell, is a big deal for them. But still, on the defensive line, they still have a really stout front. So it's going to be a much tougher game to get the run game going this week for Josh Kelly and Austin Eckler, and I think they'll see some success, but obviously not 250 plus like they had last week. So I do think it's going to be a more difficult stretch for the Chargers to get offensive things going. But like Alex said, I think losing Javonte Williams really impacts this game. I think not having Garrett Bowles impacts this game. Dalton Reisner, I think, is also out or at least banged up. So I don't really trust the Broncos to score. It is a division game, so anything can really happen. So I am going with the Chargers win as Tyler starts typing this. I'm going to go a little bit more of a bigger Chargers win, but I'm going to say 23-17. So like Alex, I just don't feel like the Broncos have enough of an offense to really make me like the Chargers will make it interesting. Of course, they always do in these divisional games, but I don't think the Broncos have enough of an offense for me to like sweat the pick, if that makes sense. So I do think primetime Herbert, Khalil Mack should have a pretty big, sizable matchup advantage. And frankly, that's like as simple as it gets for me. I think the Chargers' best defensive front player shows up. I think their best offensive player shows up. Should be a positive bounce back for Derwin James this week as well. So I do think Chargers win and at least cover the spread this week.
Yeah, I would agree. This game for me, just division game. You're slightly banged up yourself. I just want to see a win. As long as I'm not seeing just critical, awful errors from the coaching staff or critical, awful errors from the players, I'm mostly happy with the win here. I think everyone should kind of just temper their expectations for how the offense will score. Guess what? They're probably not scoring 34 points this week. If they do, promote Lombardi to head coach or something, because this is currently a top 3 defense. Yes, I know who they've played, but they can only play who they've played, and they've been a top 3 defense and look really good. The Chargers let, the Texans and the Browns and Jacoby Brissett have their way a bit with them on defense. So I'm almost worried for this game, but at the same time, like you said, I just like watching the Broncos play and watching Russell Wilson. They just don't look good. There's nothing really there. There might be on Monday Night Football, and I'm sure the Chargers will make some 6th round pick a star, but there's just not a whole lot there to make me say that the Broncos will go ahead and score, more than the Chargers, as long as the Chargers have a normal game. And especially because the Chargers have figured out their rushing attack. If they were still struggling like they did against the Jaguars, sort of late against the Chiefs, then yeah, maybe I might even pick the Broncos to win. But because they started to find their run game, that's working. They figured out how to get Mike Williams involved. I feel okay about their floor as an offense. Whereas the Broncos, like some people are saying that the Broncos could score, 9 points on Monday. That's definitely possible too. So I just trust the Chargers floor right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair way of putting that.
Bills took the lead.
The Bills took the lead.
24-20.
So, okay.
With a minute left for Patrick Mahomes and 2 timeouts. Gee, how's this going to end?
Oh, okay. So they lose the game.
Yeah.
Man, where have we seen this before? They'll probably score in like 20 seconds or something. And then,
the Bills will score again.
Bills will score again or something crazy. So it's been a really fun game. Obviously not super high scoring, but, these two quarterbacks are just unreal. So, obviously we'll start taking some questions here, but I feel like we're all in agreement again, kind of back-to-back weeks where the three of us are kind of looking at this in a very similar fashion. So big game for the Chargers defense. They have to be able to show up in kind of a get right fashion, in my opinion. Just play a clean matchup and don't give up any of these big runs. If you give up a big run to Melvin Gordon, man, I'm going to be so frustrated. And we all know it's probably going to happen at some point because it's Melvin Gordon, it's a revenge game and all that bullshit. But if we could limit him to like a 20-yard gain, that would be cool.
Sounds good. There we go. 20-yard gains. I'm going to see what Melvin Gordon's history against the Chargers is. Let me check last year. It's tough because he wasn't the guy. I believe they give it to Javonte more. Let's see.
They've sort of been like
4.9 yards per carry. Nice. 83 yards on 17 carries. That's cool. And then the second game, 4.3 yards per carry. So along of 12 and 16. So yeah, under 20 seems like a good bet.
Did he fumble last week? I can't remember.
I don't think he's fumbled since the fourth week.
Yeah, I know he fumbled twice against the Niners, right?
Maybe. I can look at this up right now. 2022 did not fumble last week. He did it, but he does. Yeah, one against Seattle, 2 against the Niners, 1 against Vegas. So he's due.
He's due for a fumble. Absolutely. So Chorizo Compapas wants to make a bet with Alex.
No.
Yeah, I'm not surprised Alex doesn't want to shave his
head. He wants me to shave my head if the Padres lose, and then he'll shave. Oh no, I have to shave my head if the Phillies lose, and then he has to shave his head if the Padres lose. But that's not fair because I have to be on camera. So you like
no, we'll just bring him on. We'll just sub you out until your hair grows back.
No.
Yeah. Apparently Josh Allen hurdled somebody too, so gonna have to go look at that on Twitter.
Cool.
But yeah, so we'll take some questions. Obviously, if you guys feel free to use the super chat, we always appreciate that. If you want to ask us about the game, ask us about baseball. I don't watch, but I guess Alex could answer a baseball question, food question, tennis question, all that good stuff is on the table. I guess it's is it the off season of tennis at this point?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
Gotcha. Richard did have a comment earlier. Wanted to point this out. He says, "Do something defensively, please. This is it. This is one of the worst offenses."
Interception.
Mahomes threw a pick.
Mahomes threw a pick, baby.
Wow.
To T. Johnson, intended for Sky Moore. I don't know who T. Johnson is.
I think that's the slot corner. Tehran, I want to say.
Yeah, all right. All the Chargers had to do was not throw a pick six, and they'd be first in the AFC West.
Damn.
But I'll take it. And the Ravens lost, so it's Bills, obviously. Chiefs are second in the AFC or in the AFC. And then if the Chargers win, is it them?
In terms of straight up standings, I believe so. Yeah.
At least there's a T. Johnson making an impact against the Chiefs somewhere.
Spirit out. Maybe it was Tyron. You never know.
Tehran instead of Tyron. That's just cruel. That's cruel. Right there.
Now it says play under review.
Oh,
guys in the live chat.
Oh, do we have an Asante Samuel Jr.? He bobbled it situation.
Is Asante playing over there? What's going on, man?
I'm not watching the game, so I don't know. But
somebody let us know if there's if somebody dropped it or not. If it's a clean pick. review, of course. Typical Arrowhead. It is typical Arrowhead. It is typical
Okay, wait,
Chiefs.
now it says interception when I hit refresh, so I don't know if they just because they had to review it, they reviewed it. Well, now it says under review. Somebody help me in the chat.
Matt said, "No way, it's overturned." Okay, so it's a clear interception. But we've seen this before.
That clock's got to hit
stadium.
0. Yeah, it's got to be tomorrow before I believe it.
Right. Did want to get to Richard's point here, though. He says this is one of the worst offenses we will play. They've looked comical. If they don't dominate, especially on defense, what does Staley do? We've kind of talked about this a little bit in our chat. Just the three of us talking about the frustrations on defense, but this is certainly, we saw obviously the opportunity that the Chargers offense had against the Texans, and it's kind of given them some momentum. I think we potentially could see the same thing for the defense if they're able to kind of get right in this game, get some pressure on Russell, create a couple turnovers. But Alex, what do you make of just kind of the vibe around the defense right now and the opportunity they have tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, they have an opportunity to kind of reverse course here. I guess the big thing is the last 2 weeks they've played the Texans not so much, but I mean, they played a really good rushing offense in the Browns, and we know that defensively that's just not what the Chargers are good at. So for me, if you are playing this Melvin Gordon Broncos rushing attack, you should be able to stop it pretty easily, right? Again, but you shouldn't have, we shouldn't be worried about over 150 yards of rushing against this team, considering they don't run the ball with Russell Wilson anyway. So for me, I think that should be a hope or positivity, I guess, for Chargers fans. But at the same time, it's been everything else about the defense other than the run defense that's kind of bugged me, because we've already sort of baked that into our equation. But what we didn't bake into our equation going into the season was J.C. Jackson looking how he's looked, unfortunately. Joey Bosa obviously getting injured, and then Kyle Van Noy and Chris Rumph not being able to step in quite as, we would have wanted them to, or, create pressure as much as we would have wanted to, as well as run defense. And so, even last game, Derwin did not have like the best game against the Browns. So for me, it's just been everything else on defense other than the run game, because you've kind of already baked that in as a variable. And I think Tyler's said this a couple times, but just what is the identity of this defense more so than anything else? Because it doesn't feel like they've really found it yet. It is hard to find it when Joey Bosa is injured and J.C. Jackson, that situation's going on and all these other things. But it would be a nice time for the Chargers to bounce back against an offense that is struggling and sort of find out, I guess, what their defense for the rest of the year sort of will look like and what the attitude of that will be.
Yeah, that's my. Go ahead, Tyler. Sorry.
No, basically just yes. I would love a nice bounce back game for this defense. I just want to see. I just want to see the defense hold the team to less than they're expected to get. That'd be great. I just don't think that the Chargers can sustain this with the tackle situation that they have. I believe in Trey Pipkins, but I don't want to find out in the second half of the year that it was kind of fool's gold. And at some point now you have Lindsley issues. Maybe Filer doesn't hold up like he kind of hasn't this whole year. And then, Salyer maybe isn't as great as we think. Maybe Pipkins regresses a little bit because, again, it was just a flash in the pan first half of the season or something. So, yeah, would love the defense to show up. Let's see. The Broncos are scoring 15 points a game. So I guess I feel good about the Chargers' chances of bouncing back. I don't need them to shut out the Broncos. I just want to see, kind of like your score prediction, Steven, like 17 points from the Broncos, 19 points, 20 points. Like just show me that you're not going to take Houston, who's scoring currently 17.2 points per game, all the way to, was it 24? Right? They ended up scoring. I just don't want to see like a full touchdown gain, but then again, like I kind of projected that. So we'll see.
Yeah, lately from like a defensive perspective, I've just kind of been feeling like it's improved, but really like how much are we talking about? Because I feel like from a play to play basis, they're definitely better. Like the run defense is better, at least, up front schematically, it looks cleaner. Obviously having Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson and, the top 10 in the league in run stop percentages and total run stop is really helping them up front. I'm just looking for more, like, I just need to see more clean plays being made behind the defensive line. And like, that's been my biggest frustration is like, okay, the defensive line has really had some good moments. Even last week against the Browns, like there were some good run stops, good pressures by Morgan Fox, Jerry Tillery, Khalil Mack. And I can't believe I just said Jerry Tillery in that same sentence. But like the defensive line is much improved even without having Joey Bosa right now. I think they're playing at a higher level than they were last year. Maybe outside of like the last 4 or 5 games when Uchenna really kind of turned it on late. But defensively, like the back 7, if you will, has really been disappointing to me outside of a couple really good games from Bryce Callahan, a couple good games from Asante and Derwin, of course. But I just haven't really felt like a ton of cohesion outside of that. There's still a lot of communication errors, I feel like. I mean, Nasir Adderley got benched for that same reason. Kenneth Murray, Drew Tranquil are not really diagnosing things super well in front of them. And so it's like you have these mental errors that are really leading to these explosive plays being given up on defense. And it's really, frankly, making their numbers look a lot worse than I feel like they should be. So I just want to see them play like a true assignment sound game for at least the majority of the game. And that's really been the biggest frustration for me, is that year 2 of the defense, you have a lot of Staley's guys come in and guys who know the system, and it still feels like we're dealing with like year 1 mistakes, like changing from Gus Bradley to Brandon Staley's scheme type of mistakes. Him saying that on Monday or Tuesday or whenever it was that the defense is still a work in progress fundamentally is just, it's a little frustrating, if I'm going to be honest here, because we're supposed to be past that stage. And the offense certainly has had that a little bit to start this season, but they've grown out of it, right? Like the offense is really starting to find its groove again after all of the injuries. And now we haven't seen the defense really play a clean game outside of the first game. And even that was kind of, how much was it clean versus how much was Derek Carr just being bad in that game. So it's definitely been frustrating watching this defense over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, you talk about the Nasir Adderley benching, and obviously we'll see if that kind of produces some sort of results for the defense going forward. Don't want to say Alohi Gilman's pick from Jacoby Brissett was really Alohi Gilman's doing. But Michael Davis is also another player that's gotten benched. Pretty much didn't play any defensive snaps last game. And so, is that something that, Brandon Staley views as a problem? And now, like, with those benchings, the defense is kind of going to be fixed. Is there another secret benching that is coming that we don't know about? Right. And Brandon Staley kind of did a lot of that in 2021 as well. So the fact that we're already kind of playing the benching game, trying to like move things around in 2022 is a little bit concerning to me for sure. Definitely think this defense still has potential and stuff. But for me, that the lack of cohesion, as we've talked about, and I guess the lack of a game-to-game vision in terms of just knowing who your 11 guys are going to be or your 11 starters are going to be every game, with these injuries and in addition to these benching decisions that they've made. I guess that has been the disappointment.
Yeah, it's certainly been disappointing. Yes, I know the Chargers held the Chiefs pretty well, and that was great. Like, that was a really, really good defensive game that I also thought the game plan from the coaching staff worked there as well. But yeah, we'd love to see them a bit better. People are asking if Gilman or Nas is starting. They said they were going to let the guys battle it out during the week, and the best guy wins, blah, blah, blah. Sure, they said that. Alohi is the starter tomorrow. So unless, he gets sick or something from Corey, it sounds like Alohi is the starter tomorrow. And if that's the case, and you're going to run through that the rest of the way, then run through that the rest of the way. Please don't make this like, Adderley's starting next week. Oh, then Gilman's starting next week. Like, God, like, and if I'm being completely honest, if this is the direction you're going, and if Alohi, has a fine game, I guess, against the Broncos, and he's your starter the rest of the way, or at least he is over Nasir Adderley, trade Nasir Adderley. Like, you did draft JT Woods, and if you're not even going to play him over Alohi Gilman, or Nasir Adderley, that is, trade him, I guess. Like, if it's a special teams thing, fine. Like, Nasir Adderley as your special teamer is really cool, I'm sure, but like, I don't know. At this point, if you're not going to play him over Alohi, and you already drafted JT Woods, and Adderley's walking next year anyway, what are you going to get for Adderley if he's benched the entire rest of the way? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you trade him,
Get a
this isn't like a Desmond King thing. Like, where it seems like there's a slight, character thing here or disagreement with the coaching staff. But, I would consider it.
I would be right there with you, and frankly, I would consider trading for a different safety because it's like I talked about a couple of
Sure.
weeks ago in terms of draft needs, right? Like this defense cannot function at the way that Brandon Staley wants it to with poor safety play. And if they don't trust Nasir Adderley, sure, trade him, trade for a veteran safety. Like you have to find something else. I mean, I don't know if Mark Webb is healthy, but like this unit needs like an injection of juice, if you will, in that back four. And we've kind of seen their preference has been to have Michael Davis be their sixth defensive back. Nasir Ali barely played against the Browns. Frankly, they were doing a lot of base formation, nickel formation against the Browns to try and match up with their heavy personnel. But if you're starting Alohi Gilman, there's not going to be a big role for Nasir Ali. So I think that's a good call. Kind of an extension of this previous question. Chorizo with the super chat wants to know, how do you see Staley deploying our corners versus the Broncos receivers? Last week, it was a lot of J.C. Jackson on Amari Cooper. It wasn't like full on shadowing, but it was felt pretty close, especially watching the film back. So I would expect to see a lot of J.C. Jackson on Cortland Sutton. Obviously, he's kind of their number one receiver, and this is a big opportunity. This is going to be a different kind of game than Amari Cooper is more of a precise route runner, intermediate guys. J.C. Jackson is going to have a few go balls thrown his way, fades, slants over the middle. So this is going to be an important bounce back, not from like a speed standpoint, but like a physicality standpoint.
Yeah.
JC has to be on top of it tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I think that JC Jackson, I talked about this a little bit with Arjun in the analytics episodes. If JC is, having a little bit of an issue with faster, route running wide receivers right now, then Cortland Sutton probably is like his best opportunity amongst the Denver receivers for a bounce back game. I think that although Jerry Jeudy has his drop issues, Jerry Jeudy is a matchup that with JC playing how he's currently playing now, against speed and against route running, I think that is not the best matchup for him. So I do think he would have a little bit better luck against Cortland Sutton in this game. Obviously, like we talked about, there's no, 1v1 shadowing the whole game in a Staley defense. And so guys are going to move around anyway. But you probably live with Sante on Jeudy for most of the game as well. And then, I guess what KJ Hamler on Bryce Callahan on KJ Hamler, like, is that probably what they do? So they have other options there for Denver at receiver too. If they want to play Michael Davis, they can. So but for me, I do think the primary two would be JC on Sutton and then probably Asante on Jeudy.
Yeah, I would agree. And with Russell Wilson being the deep ball thrower sort of guy that he is, frankly, that seems to be all that he has left, is to chuck it up and hope somebody catches it. It does seem like a pretty prime spot for Mr. INT, JC Jackson, to, get something. In theory, he's healthier than he was last week. I don't really know where he's at. Frankly, it's a bit confusing. But, I mean, in theory, he is a bit healthier, and this is kind of what you brought him in for. And Wilson doesn't quite have that arm strength still. So a nice floater ball, get your first interception, start feeling good about yourself. And, hey, I could see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully this is a get right game for him. That really is the only way the Chargers, I think, kind of make the jump up from like a fine defense to an above average defense, is JC finding his stride again and being that guy from the last couple of years. Because it's not like we're not getting Joey Bosa back anytime soon.
Right.
Can't imagine this team trades for a pass rusher, although I would love that. So this is it. Like JC Jackson finding his stride again is like the only way that they can make a jump up a tier. So lots of Sean Payton questions rolling in already.
Sure.
James Bauer, the Sean Payton stuff is heating up, and there has been more rumors and stories put out that Sean is waiting to try and be the coach of Justin Herbert and the Chargers. He knows what he could do with Justin. I absolutely believe that Sean Payton would love to coach Justin Herbert, reunite with his good old pal Joe Lombardi, and that would be a good change for Sean after dealing with the last few years of Teddy and Drew Brees, his end of his career and all that stuff. The issue, right, is like the Chargers perspective, because whoever wants to hire Sean Payton has to trade for Sean Payton. Like, you can't just pay him money to come be your coach. You have to trade for him. We haven't seen a head coach trade in quite some time. I think John Gruden was really the last one and only one of the modern era, if you will. But if you're the Saints, like, are we talking like 2 first-round picks for Sean Payton? Like, I don't know, like, how this thing really works, and I don't really know if the Chargers would be into that. And then also, of course, people who think this is a thing are kind of assuming that Brandon Staley is going to be fired, which
Right.
I don't think can really be said at this point in time until we see more of the season. So I buy that Sean Payton wants to coach Justin Herbert. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Like, who wouldn't want to get their hands on
Right.
Justin Herbert? I think this is very like minimal relation to the Chargers at this point in time.
I think it's more than minimal.
What word is it?
Colin Cowherd is, a little bit buddy with Tom Telesco, and he's been making not so subtle instances on his show saying that Sean Payton wants that job.
Sure.
So there was that report, I think, from the Miami Herald that Payton was interested, I think, in the Cowboys, the Chargers, and the Dolphins over the summer.
That's right.
I wouldn't be surprised if this has a little bit more heat to it than people think. Obviously, it's going to depend on how Brandon Staley performs the rest of the season. But you look at those teams right now, the Dolphins obviously are probably not going to be able to evaluate Mike McDaniel at this point because of everything they've been through this season with the concussions and injuries to all of their quarterbacks at this point. And now... who's more on the hot seat, Mike McCarthy or Brandon Staley, is not a question that I thought I would be asking before the season started.
Yeah,
but
honestly.
Here we are. Dallas is 4-1 with Cooper Rush, and the NFC is really weak, kind of at the moment, outside of the NFC beast, apparently. So I mean, at this point, I feel like Brandon Staley, out of those 3 destinations that we've kind of talked about before, is the most on the hot seat with the most pressure on him. So, yeah, I think Brandon Staley will be given the chance, obviously, to coach out the rest of the season. And whatever happens in terms of playoffs, no playoffs, we'll see. But I wouldn't say that – I don't know if I would say he's safe if he makes the playoffs necessarily even. I don't know if that's enough with how serious the Sean Payton stuff could be. Because if the Chargers really do feel like, an ownership feels like they have a chance to go get him, I wouldn't be surprised with how much money they've already spent on the roster that they feel a more aggressive need to do that. But I'm personally not a fan of Sean Payton myself. So that's kind of where I stand on that. But to me, I would not be surprised if they wanted to go in this direction. And I do think there's more to this than is being credited for. But then again, Brandon Staley is, the coach for now, and it'll depend on how the rest of the season plays out.
I'll see what the openings are. Like you said, Mike McCarthy probably is keeping his job at this point, especially if they make the playoffs. Like, he's keeping his job, and I think the Dolphins, they're set. I think this is something that we revisit next year, but at this point, I just don't see how the Chargers, barring some epic collapse, will fire Brandon Staley. Now, and I mean that even if the defense continues to be what it currently is, which is the 30th team in points per game and bottom third in so many categories, 26 in EPA per play. But you have Justin Herbert, and part of his job, and really the most important thing that Brandon Staley said when he walked in, it wasn't fixing the defense. It was making Justin Herbert and the offense work. And I think that being his big selling point will hold for at least one more year, because if this holds and if the offense holds, I mean, the Chargers should finish top 5 offense. They are currently, if they win tomorrow, 3rd or whatever it is in the AFC. Someone said tied with the Jets, which is, I don't even understand that sentence right now, but I'll get to that, I guess, at some point. But I think the Chargers are going to stand pat for a bit. It could feel like sunk cost, honestly, but they're going to have to. Like, they invested a lot, and more than just 1 year in some of these guys. Khalil Mack isn't a free agent after this year. He could be. But Sebastian Joseph-Day is not a free agent after this year. They made a lot. J.C. Jackson is sure as shit not a free agent after this year. So they're kind of stuck, I think, through this year and next year as well with Brandon Staley. Again, stuck is a kind of mean word because
Yeah.
they're good, I think, but they are stuck.
Well, I don't know. I mean, isn't sunk cost fallacy also if you've already invested all this stuff into your defense, not tying yourself to Staley and, going out and finding another coach if you feel that that is the right decision to take control of this $500 million you've spent, right?
I mean, if they do it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like in theory, sunk cost fallacy has been a thing that a lot of GMs, some GMs understand and some GMs don't. But like in theory, like, like the Eagles could have said, oh, well, we paid Carson Wentz all this money, so therefore we have to keep him, right? But like they just decided to eat the money, and we've seen more, franchises willing to eat the money that coaches have left on the table. Carolina owes $40 million to Matt Rule over the next couple of years, and they just said, fuck this anyway. Not saying that Brandon Staley's Matt Rule, but if you want to change that direction and you really feel like, especially Carolina's not getting a Sean Payton type, right? The Chargers are the team that has the chance to do that. So for me, I don't think that he's safe necessarily with even a playoff berth. I think if they go like 10-7 and let's say they like get blown out by the Bills in like the wild card game, like I don't know, if Sean Payton's circling that job, I don't think that makes Brandon Staley safe, especially with the heat he already does take from the media and some of the fans. So
well, if they want to give Sean Payton that job and they're open to it, then Brandon Staley, like, they'll look for any excuse they can to fire him if they actually want to give him that job.
Right.
And Sean Payton wants to return and they want to trade for him, then yeah, they'll look for any excuse. I just don't think, like, I don't think they will. I've discussed it. We talked about in Discord. They pivot away from their previous coach in some way to something drastically different. So Sean Payton would be very, very different from Brandon Staley in many ways. Yeah. So it's possible. I don't see the Chargers doing it. But like Alex is saying, like, I'm not going to also rule it out as well.
And we're talking about Brandon Staley's coffee habits now in the chat. Like, what are we doing? Like for me, like I'm kind of in the middle here. Like I still need to see what happens the rest of the season. Like I think there's a lot of unjustified fan heat on the coaching staff, and in terms of like firing the staff, I certainly have had my complaints, particularly about like roster management decisions. But I mean, you're dealing with all of these kind of injuries, and it's just extremely difficult to keep your team afloat. And the Chargers have been able to bounce back, at least on offense, and get things going. So I do think Brandon Staley, has earned the chance to, prove what they can do the rest of the season. I think Alex's point about like making the playoffs and then getting blown out in the playoffs, I think that is a discussion that you could see happening, and trying to salvage the rookie contract window of Justin Herbert and being able to, make a step forward as a franchise in the next year or two, I think is certainly in the realm of possibilities. I think that this team is still a good team. I still think they're a playoff team, potentially win a playoff game. So I still think you kind of have to wait and see where this coaching staff is. But I'm definitely not personally at the point where I'm advocating for firing a coach by any means. I mean, they certainly, like I said, I still think this is a good team. They've bounced back the last 2 weeks, even if it hasn't been like the cleanest kind of world. But I don't think we're at firing a coach talk right now. It's just that, Colin Cowherd and Tom Telesco are buddies, and they're talking about it every single week, and he's buddies with Sean Payton now. So there is a lot of media smoke behind this conversation, but I don't think the Chargers are there yet.
No, we have not hit the point of Anthony Lynn sucks part 1 and Anthony Lynn sucks part 2 of the GAC season yet. We're still very far away from there. This is very important to me. What is Brandon Staley's coffee habits that people are discussing in the chat?
Like every time he does a press conference, he has a cup of coffee with him. That's like at
that's
11 in the morning or 2 p.m. or whatever.
Why would you drink caffeine? That's insane. I didn't know why you would.
I thought somebody was talking about like Brandon Staley just had some like Will Levis of Kentucky type coffee habit where he just dumped like a bottle of mayo in there or something. And then I was like, okay, that's a fireable offense. You should trade 10 picks for Sean Payton if that's the case. But otherwise, no.
No, I think he likes to drink coffee. I think his brother said one time on Twitter during the offseason that it's like 6 cups a day or something like that. But yeah, somebody was saying that him
Jesus
having
Christ,
coffee.
6 cups of coffee a day, and you're the coach of the Chargers who play like 1-score games all the time. No wonder
Yeah.
he's fucking losing his hair. Like
He's gonna age like the guy from
Oh.
Indiana Jones: Last
he's
Crusade.
gonna
just
age like Obama and Bush at this rate. Like,
everything
ugh.
goes. Yeah.
Or the king in the House of Dragon series right now.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
But like Richard said, try coaching the Chargers without coffee, like be brutal. But yeah, I think we're still a ways away from talking about
Mhm.
firing this coaching staff. I will say that I would be very interested if Brandon Staley would consider, defense like not necessarily super working out this season, if he would consider kind of handing play calling off to somebody else. That's
where I
been
did
kind
it.
of the most interesting thing for me about like what the Giants are doing with how their offense is working is Brian Dable's not even calling plays. Like he's just kind of handling everything else, and Mike Kafka
Mhm.
is calling plays on offense. So I would be interested in seeing kind of what, hiring a not that
Yeah.
Ronaldo was like illegitimate, but like hiring a veteran defensive coordinator and letting him call plays
Mhm.
and letting Brandon just kind of focus on game management and everything else from head coach. I would be curious to see what that would do for him as a coach and the team as a whole, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk a lot about Vic Fangio this offseason after he was fired. We did well, not a lot, but we talked a little bit about that. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, given the connections to Staley and all that kind of stuff, if they wanted to reevaluate after the season or something like that. But yeah.
All right. We'll take a few more questions here until we head out for watching Sunday Night Football. So if you haven't had a chance to answer your question, please do so. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Who's your favorite college prospect? Absolutely Dalton Kincaid. My guy was absolutely freaking incredible last night. Should be tight end 1, but he probably won't end up being. But yeah, my guy Dalton Kincaid. Shout out.
I didn't watch the game. All I got to see was Twitter, which is basically just the refs are screwing somebody. Dalton Kincaid gets another 10-yard reception. He had like 214 yards or something.
234. He had 16 catches for 234 yards. A tight end. Like all my people in here that are USC fans, on Twitter, everybody was blaming the refs, and the refs were shit. Absolutely. The Pac-12 refs had a banner day. But you can't give up 234 yards to a tight end and try and win a game. Like, as much as I love Dalton, we're talking about 234 yards to a tight end.
Philadelphia and St. Joe Prep's very own Marvin Harrison Jr.
Is he NFL draft eligible this year?
I don't know if it's this year or next year, but he's really good.
Nice. He's nice.
And obviously, I didn't watch a whole lot of the Alabama-Tennessee game, but Jalen Hyatt, he definitely earned himself some NFL dollars yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
One more question.
Oh, man. Somebody brought up cancer. What are we doing?
Hello to our audio listeners who don't know what's happening right now. How are you?
Oh, do we want to talk about carne asada burritos or Philly cheesesteaks? That's an interesting one, I guess.
Carne
Oh,
asada
did this
burrito.
come up because of the San Diego Philly thing?
I assume yes. Yes.
Disgusting Philly cheesesteaks. It sounds like a bunch of people who live in California and never had Philly cheesesteaks. Yeah, I mean, I think carne asada burritos are very good, but I mean, I'm going to be biased and go with Philly cheesesteaks here. But I admit it is a close contest.
Yeah, I think this is a close contest as well. I like carne asada burritos, but Philly cheesesteaks, if you make them well, are fantastic. I was saying this to Alex yesterday, but my brother served his LDS church mission in Philadelphia, and so we all went back to Philadelphia a few years after he got back, and I forget the name of the place we went to, but it was like a truly like celestial experience eating a real Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah, D'Alessandro's, if you're ever there, that is my favorite place personally.
Do we just call it cheesesteak, Alex?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of the time just called cheesesteak, or some people say steak sandwich, but I don't know. I've always called it cheesesteak. But it is very important what you call the cheese, because you got to have some of that whiz on your Philly cheesesteak.
No, I don't want whiz on my fucking Philly cheesesteak. What in the hell is that?
Whiz. Not pee-pee, but like, the cheese that comes out of the thing.
Like less diluted. You didn't drink enough of that? So it's yellow?
It's orange, not yellow, but yeah.
Oh, orange. That's a whole other issue.
All right, last question here, because I did see it a few times. Obviously, the trade deadline is a few weeks away. Also want to give a shout out to Tyler's mom with the super sticker, as always. So you can officially cross Robbie Anderson off of your list. I did not think that was going to happen.
Oh, I'm not crossing him off of mine. I don't care. You can.
I'm saying it like a predictive list. I'm saying like from a Chargers perspective, they're not trading for him after that stunt that he pulled today, in my opinion, at least.
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like a full Antonio Brown thing. Like, he just kind of barked at the coaches and got kicked out. And he doesn't really have like a history. I mean, I don't know if he would be totally off the list. But I didn't think he was on the list to begin with, because he runs way too fast and he makes too much money. So those two things would eliminate him from the Chargers. Don't know if there is a trade target, but I would imagine it probably wouldn't be at wide receiver, but rather probably edge if they wanted to go that way. Or if they, wanted to get some back seven reinforcements as well, and shore up the secondary, considering how that unit has played so far. I definitely do think it would be a defensive addition as opposed to an offensive addition. And I think the Chargers' philosophy on receivers at this point is Keenan Allen's coming back either this week, next week after the bye, and so therefore we don't need a wide receiver. I don't think they're going to go in that direction.
I would agree, and frankly, I will wait to see these additions or these trades, and then when they happen, then I'll believe that Telescope will do it. I would consider, considering how much they have invested, so NFC team that's probably not going to be doing very well, that could be sellers, that has a lot invested at that position already. I would go with De'Ami Brown from the Washington Commanders, because they just drafted Dotson in the first round. They have Terry McLaurin. They have not Debo. Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
So I would say the De'Ami Brown as a deep threat sort of guy. Again, Chargers have to want a deep threat, but I forgot he had a pulse. I forgot he existed. He had 2 deep bombs against whatever team that was last week. I consider De'Ami Brown on his rookie contract.
I would love that. I mean, he was one of my favorites in that draft class, so could have just drafted him, but that's okay. I don't think that they end up trading for a wide receiver. I think they're going to wait until they see kind of what this looks like with Keenan back and healthy. And then, it's just like the same conversation, right? Like, why would they trade for Robbie Anderson when like Keenan Allen's coming back? So that's my thing with like wide receiver at this point. In terms of defensively, I do think that there is a bigger possibility of adding somebody, especially because like we're talking about Brandon Staley's reputation as a defensive play caller. It's like, how much does he want to kind of let this personnel keep being an issue? So Robert Quinn is available. You could reunite him with Khalil and with Brandon. Actually, I don't think Brandon Staley coached him. No. But you could reunite him with Khalil Mack. Get some legitimate juice on opposite of him. I think he is a free agent after this season. So you're talking about a legit like rental. So I think that could be a possibility. I think like Jerry Hughes with Houston could also be a possibility. It's an AFC team, but they've invested in edge quite a bit as well. They're not a contending level team, so they could be sellers. So I would focus my attention more on the defensive line or back half of the defense. Xavier Woods in Carolina is another veteran I wouldn't be opposed to, was in Minnesota with Ryan Ficken. So at least there's some kind of coaching ties there. So, as much as I would love Robbie Anderson on the Chargers, right? Like there's no ties to the coaching staff. He just got kicked off his team today. So that's really where I would focus in more is on the defense and see what you can make happen there.
What's Tutu Atwell up to? Is he doing anything?
Not really. Not really. He plays I think 10 snaps a game on offense. He's mostly just their returner.
I'm sure there's a reason. But I don't know. Find somebody.
Doesn't meet the height requirement. Sorry.
Doesn't work. Definitely does not meet that requirement.
No.
But if we fatten him up enough and he gets swell enough,
if we put him in like when they put two kids on top of each other in a trench coat in like a movie, and then we can get Tutu Atwell on the Chargers.
Yeah, sounds pretty good.
Okay, so Richard says that Robert Quinn has 2 years left on his deal, which I thought that he was a free agent after this season, but I'm pretty sure you could cut him after the season and do the same thing pretty much.
So, by the way, I have to correct something that I've been saying wrong, and someone pointed it out on Twitter. I thought Alohi Gilman was a free agent after this season. He's not. I've been saying it like over and over again. I thought he was. He's not. I don't know how
he was drafted 2020, right? So he would have one more year after this year.
Yeah. For some reason, I thought that they had kind of like Mark Webb cut him, brought him back, smaller deal or whatever. But never mind.
Oh yeah, I don't know why I thought that he was cut as a rookie too, but I don't know.
Someone said Deshaun Jackson, his hamstrings are made out of whiz at this point. So I don't think that's a good idea. Also, he's an anti-Semite, but yeah.
I've learned whiz is good though today, so maybe that's not a bad thing.
No, whiz tastes very good, but that means his hamstrings are literally made out of cheese. So I don't think that he would hold up.
Okay.
Yeah. No, in terms of a receiver, like I said, I would want to see what it looks like with Keenan back. Maybe sign John Hightower to the active roster instead of Jason Moore. Like that would be cool. But yeah, I don't think they'll end up trading with somebody. Somebody said the spam person was a Raiders fan. That's hilarious.
Yeah, let's see. The bot was Tinder Hot XYZ best adult dating site. So yeah, maybe. Also not our sponsor, but we'll also take that sponsor.
Guilty as Charged podcast sponsored by Tinder Hot XYZ best adult dating site. Go to tinderhot.xyz/guilty to get 10% off your first purchase.
It literally lines itself up. Yeah. I wonder if that's why we get so many darn spam,
You're listening to the Guilty as Charged podcast, but we know you're going to be doing some guilty activities later.
I'd have a field day with that every week.
I know. It would be so fun.
Oh my gosh.
Goodness sake. Shit. The comment. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to end it. So Tyler, we'll start with you, man. Any final thoughts before we head out and get ready for the game tomorrow night?
I'm going to live in this bubble and this bliss of not watching the entire game except for like the final 15 minutes of the game. So, I'll just show up tomorrow night and, you'll let me know what happened. Hopefully there's a win.
So you're going to do the opposite of what I did when the Chargers played the Chiefs on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, because I have class until 7:30 and I won't get home till like 8 something. So it'll just be me like, I don't know, did they win? I'll watch whatever the game ending crazy drive that gives us all anxiety is. And I'll tweet like WTF are we doing? Just for
Oh man, good stuff. Alex, any final thoughts before we head out?
No, just hope Chargers get the win tomorrow. Obviously, big divisional game. Always like to beat Denver. And yeah, no, just hope we get the win tomorrow and move on from there, because technically if they get the win tomorrow, they're tied for first in the division again.
Yeah. Big game, even though it doesn't really, I don't feel like it has a ton of juice, or at least it doesn't have as much juice as it would have heading into the season. So I'm excited about it either way. Haven't spent a whole lot of time thinking about football this week up until really yesterday. But I think this is a good opportunity again for the Chargers to keep building, stacking up some wins, stacking up some good games. And I look forward to them making Russell Wilson look better after I talked shit on him all week 2 weeks ago. So that should be fun as well.
Yeah, I literally have Russell Wilson's face on Thomas the Tank Engine right now for our thumbnail. I've been talking mad shit in the thumbnails, and boy, am I going to hear it. With that said, this is how bad Russell Wilson has been. I haven't seen a single Broncos fan in our live chats at all this entire week. Yeah. Even Jaguars fans showed up, and even Texans fans showed up.
Yeah, that was there's not a lot of excitement around Broncos media from what I can tell either. They're already talking about firing their head coach, so that's where they're at.
I'm going to do a rare instance of freeze cold taking myself. I wanted to trade Jalen Hurts for Russell Wilson so bad, and I fucking hate myself for it. So I apologize.
There you go. There you go. Hey man, we all have those takes. It's all good. So, Russell Wilson once was a guy, now he's not. So should be fun. We're gonna go live directly after the show, or after the game, excuse me, tomorrow night, probably about 15 minutes afterwards. So we'll have some live reaction. We'll see if Arjun joins us for that as well. I think he had a pretty eventful afternoon at the big noon kickoff as well. So shout out to Arjun. Always appreciate all of his work as well. So yeah, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Appreciate everybody showing up. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, and we'll see you tomorrow.